Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LEDA Project Jobs Reporting webinar. This webinar is brought to you today by the New Mexico Economic Development Department in collaboration with the Department of Workforce Solutions. And I'm Crystal Clearwater, a financial development specialist with the NMEDD. And I will be your host today along with Mr. Juan Torres, our Financial Development Team Director. Presentation material contained within this webinar was prepared by myself, Mr. Torres, and Michelle Duran of the Department of Workforce Solutions. And unfortunately, she could not join us today, but she will be on hand to answer any questions you may have later on down the line about some of the things that we're going to be talking about. This webinar will be recorded and provided to the registrants after today's presentation along with the slides. And we do welcome your questions. Please type them in the text box to the right of the screen, and we will answer them at the end of this presentation. So today we're going to discuss a little bit about the financial development team and what we do. We're going to be talking about the LEDA fund and what it does. We're going to talk a little bit about the compliance aspects of the project participation agreements. We're going to talk about how to create a jobs report without using the old ES 903 form that everyone's used to. And we're going to talk about completing the jobs report affidavit that's going to be included with that. And a little bit about the submission of the jobs report and the accompanying affidavit to help people understand where to send that, and also who to call for help. So that's lined up for the agenda. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Torres to talk a little bit about the financial development team and what we do.
Thank you, Crystal. Good morning. The New Mexico Economic Development Department has a finance development team, and our overall goal at the department is the creation and retention of jobs in the state of New Mexico. We use a lot of different tools to help businesses in expansion, relocation, and starting up, or to prevent them from closing. In general, we provide a number of different things that we help companies and individuals. We do direct consultations with businesses to help identify their needs. We do some analysis, interpretation of financials. We work with companies, resource partners, agencies, economic development organizations. We work with all the federal agencies, including USDA, the Finance Authority, HUD, and SBA. And we help identify options that we may have at the state level or that might be available at the federal level or even in the private sector, including debt and or equity financing. We work with banks directly as well as microlenders and CDFIs to facilitate these financial packaging. And we provide incentive analysis and tax credit analysis to identify opportunities for saving. Next slide, please. Some of the programs that we have, everybody might be familiar. In this particular webinar, we're talking about the Local Economic Development Act Capital Outlay Fund, also known as LEDA. Recently, we have instituted a Rural Efficient Business Program in collaboration with the Energy and Minerals Department and the USDA to provide cost-saving workshops on identifying energy, financial, and workforce opportunities to streamline operations and save money. We also have a brand new credit enhancement program. Some of you may be familiar with the old collateral support program that was run through the New Mexico Finance Authority. And so we have taken that on at the department, and we are instituting basically loan guarantees through the credit enhancement program, and that's we've just done the first deal in Hobbs, New Mexico. So you can go to our website, gonm.biz, to find out more information. And of course, the New Mexico Funded, which is a multi-agency funding mechanism to look at infrastructure and community development projects. Other programs that we work with are the New Markets Tax Credit with through the New Mexico Finance Authority, the U.S. EB-5 Foreign Investor Program, and we are currently working with the Department of the Treasury on designating the opportunity zones that will be in place for the next 10 years. Next slide, please. So the Local Economic Development Act basically allows us to utilize public funds to assist businesses that are relocating or expanding in New Mexico. The funds reimburse a portion of the costs incurred for land, building, and infrastructure, and the eligibility for use of this fund is limited to manufacturers or economic-based companies. The final decisions are made by the Secretary and the Governor, and a number of different factors go into that kind of decision. More information, again, can be found on our website at gonm.biz. So a LEDA project, when it's finalized, will have a executed project participation agreement, or PPA, which is entered into by the company or the qualified entity, which is the same. The company is the qualified entity, and the community, which acts as the fiscal agent for the life of the project. The PPA will contain within that document a scope of work that essentially outlines the job creation, the LEDA amount, any other public benefits that are agreed to, and will also contain a clawback provision and schedule, including an expiration date for that PPA. Next slide, please. If state LEDA funds are utilized, then a complementary document is also drafted called the Intergovernmental Agreement. It contains the exact information of the scope of work outlined in the PPA, and it basically identifies roles and responsibilities with respect to the Economic Development Department and the community fiscal agent. In addition to the PPA and the IGA, an agreed upon security instrument and the amount of the full LEDA award is identified and provided prior to funds transferring between the Economic Development Department and the fiscal agent. So that's a very important point. While all the other aspects of the project might be completed, there might be assigned PPA, assigned IGA, and even a passed ordinance. If we don't have a security instrument in place, we will not transfer funds. So that's an important point to note. Finally, the LEDA project ordinance is passed and approved by the local government body as a fiscal agent for every single LEDA project. So a community has its originating LEDA ordinance, which is the master ordinance, and then each project gets its own individual ordinance as well. Next slide, please. So in this presentation, we're going to talk about jobs reporting. We will have additional presentations in the future that will outline other activities for the fiscal agent, including reviews of invoicing and how to do that, and other, and if in the unfortunate case of clawback provisions, how to execute those things as well. So again, look for more of these webinars, and we will be putting those up into our knowledge base on our website. But in this case, we're going to be talking about jobs reporting, and we're specifically, so there should be two audiences for this presentation. One is the company that has either received LEDA funding or anticipates that they will be receiving LEDA funding, and the other audience for this presentation would be fiscal agents that would oversee that. So as called for the PPA, LEDA projects must report job creation on an annual, semi-annual, or quarterly basis, depending on when your LEDA project was completed. This information will be found in your project participation agreement. Currently, we're trying to migrate everyone into a quarterly reporting basis, and you'll see very quickly that this is very easy and quick, and so we feel that this would keep things rolling along. But currently, based on your existing PPAs, you have identified job creation report periods. So, but again, and we also endeavor to move this entire project in terms of uploading these reports through our online portal very soon in the future, utilizing the Salesforce website. So look for that as well. We'll be able, projects will be able to log in, download the report, complete it, and then attach the information that this webinar is going to discuss, and then send that to us. So hopefully we're going to streamline this process very quickly into a very I would say no more than 10-minute process, and look for that in the future. Projects completed in FY16 and after require an affidavit from the company that attests to the validity of reported jobs information and identifies the number of full-time permanent jobs. Full-time being defined as 32 hours per week or greater. I think Crystal's going to talk about that briefly towards the end of the presentation. Right now, we are still updating that affidavit, but I can say that we are streamlining that process as well. So we're looking to make it easier. We're looking to drop the notarization requirement, and we're just making it more visually straightforward so that that'll be completed very easily. It's again our goal to migrate all these projects to a quarterly reporting time frame for consistency, and we endeavor to make that very, very easy through our online portal, and we'll be notifying projects going forward about that. So with that, I turn it over to Crystal Clearwater to walk us through the jobs reporting post ES 903.
Thank you so much for that, Juan. I really appreciate you giving us overviews on all of those things. So let's get into the meat of what we want to talk about today in regards to how to create a jobs report without using that old ES 903 form. Good question, and we were able to finally answer this question with the slides that we're about to provide you. Now, one thing I would like to point out before I go forward is that the steps to create the jobs report that you're going to be seeing today is going to be completed by the company. The company is actually who is responsible for creating those jobs reports. However, the community fiscal agent is also responsible for actively working with the company to help them obtain these reports. And that's why we're providing this to the fiscal agents as well, these steps, so that you can kind of go along with the company and see for yourself what those steps are. Now, I'd also like to add that our regional representatives here at the New Mexico Economic Development Department are available to help out those fiscal agents and companies as well. So there is a plethora of resources, as you will see. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on with this presentation. So, as I said, the company is responsible for generating the jobs report and submitting it along with the accompanying affidavit to the community fiscal agent. And these instructions you're about to see are applicable for most employers, including those employers using a third-party administrator to file their reports. ADP comes to mind. If an employer is using a professional employer organization as the employer of record, the employees are reported under that PEO employer account number, and these instructions do not apply. And an example of that might be when you have another company handling your payroll. But if you need help understanding the difference between those two things, please feel free to contact Michelle Duran of the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions. And as you can see, there's her phone number there, 505-383-2723, or by email. And you'll see that we'll have her information at the end as well. So moving on. How to create this jobs report? Well, this is a very simple, straightforward process, as Juan alluded to. The first thing that you're going to do is you would go to the link that you see there, and log into the employer account. Now, hopefully, all the companies that have already been entering information into the Department of Workforce Solutions website are already familiar with this screen, because they have to log in order to upload their data or input their data for their jobs reporting to the Department of Workforce Solutions. So hopefully they will already know their username and password. If not, you can reach out to the UI tax support team at 1-877-664-6984 or by email. And as you can see, we have provided the link here. One thing I would like to reiterate is that this presentation and slides will be provided to all of the participants for the webinar today. So you'll have these links and they'll be active for you to click on and check all this out for yourself. Okay, so the first step is to log in. The next step is you will go to the Employment and Wage Detail Reporting Home option on the left-hand menu and click on that, which takes us to step 3, where the company would click View Submission History. And step 4 brings us to this box where you can enter a year with a drop-down box and click Search. Now, one thing to keep in mind is only 1 year can be viewed at a time. I believe that is a calendar year. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. That's all you have to do. Select the year and click Search. Next, step 5. So you're going to see results that look like this pop up on the screen, okay? And there's a few things that I'd like to point out about these results. The first being over here to the left-hand side here, you see this person, when they ran a search, they did it for year 2016, and it brought up every single quarter of the reporting information that was entered into the Department of Workforce Solutions website for that year. That's totally fine. It's okay for all of that to be there so long as the period in question, for example, if this was fourth quarter 2016 and that's what you were actually reporting on, so long as we can see that here, it's fine that we have all this other stuff too. We're not going to be fussy about that. We just need to be able to see this fourth quarter 2016 if that's the period you're reporting on, okay? So that said, the next thing I'd like to point out is, as you can see, there's a months column here, months 1, 2, and 3. When you're going to be filling out your affidavit, the supporting number for your affidavit is going to be in month 3, okay? So that's something to keep in mind. This jobs report is supporting documentation to the affidavit. So that said, we're always looking for the most current recent information that we can get, and it'll be as of the date of that affidavit, which should match up to the reporting period that you're pulling these jobs reports for. So when you're filling out your affidavit, I would like to see a number that is equal to or less than the number of jobs that I see here in month 3. And I'll get into that a little more later about why it might be less than, okay? So the next thing I'd like to point out on this is that the status here says processed. And that's good because that means that it's already batched through the Department of Workforce Solutions system and that any errors have been resolved and everything's good. So when a company first enters this information into the Department of Workforce Solutions system, it's got to batch through there, and it could take up to 72 hours before you see this process status. Now, it can take less time. It just depends how big a file it is, if there's any problems to resolve, and so on and so forth. But what we'd like to see for jobs reporting purposes is that this status does say process, because that lets us know that it's now been accepted by the Department of Workforce Solutions, which is the point of having this jobs report to support the affidavit. So that said, again, this was step 5, and this is what you see. The next step would be just to print that information, and you can do that by going to the print button on the top right-hand side of the screen. And one thing I would like to point out, and I'm going to actually go back to the prior slide for just a moment. When you print this, please make sure that that we can see all of these columns, all the way from submission date to at least the status. You know, we'd like to see all of these columns if possible, because that helps us to ensure that we have all the information we need. So again, you're just going to print that, and it's that simple. The report is created, and then we're going to explore a little bit about the affidavit. Now, as Juan said, the jobs report affidavit is filled out and signed by the authorized company representative, and it certifies the current number of full-time permanent employees working in production positions within the organization during the reporting period. Now, production positions are those that are related specifically to the manufacturing or economic-based activities of the company. Just to let you know, that's kind of the difference between what we're calling a production position and a non-production position, which has now become something that we need to delineate. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The next thing is a full-time employee is that person that works directly for the company at least 32 hours per week on a permanent basis. And that production employee, again, that's a person working in that position directly related to manufacturing or economic-based activities. So please do try and keep that in mind. Now, as Juan said before, we are currently in the process of streamlining our affidavit to be more user-friendly and simple to understand. And we will be releasing our new and improved affidavit soon, so be on the lookout for that. Okay, so one thing I'd like to make sure everyone remembers. Okay, I'm going to say it one more time. The authorized company representative will be the person to fill out and sign the affidavit, which certifies the number of full-time production employees employed by the company during the last month of the reporting period, as supported by the jobs report. So that's one of the main things. I wanted to just drill that home and make sure everybody remembers that. Okay, so you have this great jobs report and you have this great affidavit. It's got your amazing, famous autograph on it, but what do you do with it? Well, those jobs reports and their accompanying affidavits should be submitted by the company to the community fiscal agent. And that community fiscal agent is going to review that information, make sure that it seems correct, that it does meet the requirements for the PPA. And then they're going to go ahead and work with the company to get any corrections done if necessary. And once that's all fixed up, they're going to send it on over to us here at the state so that we can put a gold star next to your name saying the company did their reporting for this reporting period. Now, currently the state accepts the jobs reports from the community fiscal agents as an attachment sent via email to our email address, which is leda.compliance@state.nm.us. So we look forward to receiving all of your beautiful jobs reports and affidavits. All right, so say you have a problem. Maybe, you're having some trouble and things aren't working right. Who do you call? Well, that's a good question, and I would like to clarify that for you. So if you need help with understanding the LEDA program and its processes, or the project participation agreement, understanding what's in there and how to read it, or you need help with the LEDA jobs reporting process and how all that works, or the jobs reporting affidavit, or other programs that are offered by the New Mexico Economic Development Department, feel free to contact my team. And that includes myself, Joanna Nelson, and Mr. Juan Torres. So if you have problems accessing, entering, or submitting data into the unemployment insurance tax system, the company, they're trying to enter in their employees' jobs information, and they're just having problems. They can't log in. It's not saving it. It won't batch. They can't get that beautiful status we're looking for. Whatever the case may be, they can contact the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions Assistance Help Desk for that. And please note that we will be, of course, providing that information at the end of this webinar for everyone to have that. The next thing is, if you have problems locating and printing the jobs reports. In other words, if you have problems going through the steps that I just showed you, for some reason maybe your screen looks different. You know, weird things happen with technology. Please feel free to contact Michelle Duran of the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions, and she can kind of screen that for us and check it out and make sure that maybe, you know, maybe there's some setting that's causing you to see something different. And she might actually send you to the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions Assistance Help Desk if it's something that they'll need to help you with. So those are some things to keep in mind. That's who you can call for help. And we really do appreciate you joining us today and learning about this. I know it's not the most exciting topic in the world, but we try to make it interesting. And so now I'm going to go ahead and take your questions. And let me just move over there and see what we have. Okay. So I have a question here that says, will there be a PPA template provided after the presentation?
So, unfortunately, you know, we work statewide directly with communities, and each community has a different way of doing their PPA. One thing we are working on at the state level is what I would say is the kind of critical parts of a PPA with respect to the state. So we're working on components that we require, that we will be requiring in all PPAs going forward. But currently, each and every PPA is unique to the community that is drawing it up. It's a legal document that has a number of different standardized components, but at the end of the day, different communities have different PPAs. So unfortunately, we don't have a template PPA, but like I said, we will have in the future, at the very least, we'll have a PPA kind of outline that tells you what different components we will be requiring at the state level. And that was just to clarify, or just to address another question that occasionally comes up, which is, you know, why can't the fiscal agents, or why can't we at the state directly access the system and get the jobs report ourselves? The reason is that this is taxpayer confidentiality. So the companies submitting these information directly to Workforce Solutions does not allow sharing of that information across government entities. So we cannot log in and get that information, and fiscal agents as well cannot log in and get that information. So we rely on the company to log in, get that information, print out or PDF out the results, and then send that along to the fiscal agent and the company and the community, and the state.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is, in the project participation agreement, does there have to be a clawback, or can distribution of funds be based on meeting specific goals on a set timeline?
Those are not mutually exclusive. The LEDA Act calls for a schedule of clawback for non-performance. So again, those are not mutually exclusive. You have a timetable for performance, and the clawback merely speaks to what happens if those performance metrics are not met. So it's statutorily required, and it actually makes complete sense to say, here's the schedule of job creation, or the public benefits identified, the milestones, if you will, by these dates. And then again, the clawback schedule really reflects what happens if there is no performance in those periods. Ordinarily, PPAs include cure periods, so that when a certain date triggers a certain clawback, you know, a company might be given an opportunity to repair that situation or address that situation. Those are identified individually by each community, and it's based on their particular local ordinances in place at that time.
Thank you. So how will this information be distributed to the companies that currently have LEDA agreements?
So we will be communicating with the fiscal agents. This was our first kind of direct outreach in that direction. We've created a number of systems for this. So we have a constant contact list of all the fiscal agents in current projects, and we continually, we just went through an update of that information. And so we continue to update that information as we go forward, but the answer is we'll be communicating directly via constant contact after, not directly after, but very soon after this webinar, to inform all the fiscal agents where they can go to get these slides and get this information.
Great. So are we going to have to amend our existing PPAs to move to the quarterly basis?
Not necessarily. Most PPAs, if not all PPAs, include the request for additional information. And so we are kind of looking at it in that regard. It doesn't fundamentally change a requirement. It's strictly just identifying a deadline for submission of the information. This is, again, based on the feedback and the kind of review of this of these reports by the Legislative Oversight Committee. So we report to the Legislative Oversight Committees, and you know, we've been requested to be more diligent and to provide more timely information. So this is our attempt at that. So again, the provision under which most PPAs include the agreement to provide additional information as requested, and we feel that that generally covers these requests. But again, if a particular community feels that an amendment is needed, then we're more than happy to help them to do that. Obviously, we don't want to create a lot of additional paperwork and additional time for what seems to be just an agreement to provide the information they have to provide anyway in a kind of different time frame. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay. So your previous slide said that contact information will be provided in the final slide of the presentation. Is there still another slide? I can answer that, and I can tell you that yes, there is. And let me go ahead. I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm just going to go ahead and move on to that slide now there for you so that you can see all of that beautiful information. All right, so next question is, when will new reporting be implemented? When is it going to happen, this new?
So we're hoping that we can get final approval by the beginning of the next fiscal year. That would be July 1st. But again, that's being reviewed by the Secretary, and as soon as we can get approval, then we will put that out. But we're hoping to have that by, well, we're hoping to have all of these updates and systems in place, including the uploadability to Salesforce by July 1st.
Perfect. And so that said, the steps that you saw in today's webinar are actually currently real-time, ready to go. So that is currently the new reporting method without that ES-903 report, in addition to Juan was talking about the moving into that quarterly reporting for everybody. That's what July is about. Now, for actually, you know, this new type of reporting that we're doing now without that ES-903, that's today. That's being initiated today. So the problem that we found was that the ES-903 reports are no longer being accepted by the Department of Workforce Solutions. So we came up with this new plan of using the Department of Workforce Solutions system itself to develop these reports, which is what we went over today. And that side of things is already in motion and current. That's presently the way we are going to be accepting those jobs reports. So in addition to what Juan said about eventually moving to a totally quarterly basis, and the new things that we're going to be putting into movement with the Salesforce updates and stuff, that's going to be later on. But as far as actually utilizing the steps we went over today to create a jobs report, that's happening now. So thank you for that question. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions today. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Torres?
So just to finally kind of reiterate the whole idea of reporting, you know, we're required to report to the legislature, and we're happy to do that. I would encourage the fiscal agents out there to look at the reporting period as an opportunity to reach out to the companies, to remind themselves of the projects that they have, that you might have in your communities, as an opportunity to communicate and talk with them to find out how they're doing. Ultimately, the purpose and goal is not to be punitive with respect to you're not making your performance, but rather to be more proactive about how, you know, what can we do to help you if you're not performing. So I would encourage fiscal agents and communities to look at this as a positive, kind of a positive activity associated. The idea that we're hoping to go to the quarterly period, again, gives you more opportunities to contact those companies, see how they're doing, and potentially provide them with other resources that might help them if in fact they're not doing so well, but also to give them congratulations if they're doing above and beyond their performance metrics. So I would not look at this as anything punitive or anything of a kind of onerous task. I would look at it as the opportunity to reach out, and likewise for companies, if any companies are on this presentation, to be able to proactively provide the information to the fiscal agent, so that there are no kind of surprises, if you will, coming in, but also to be able to celebrate successes, early successes with regards to job creation. So anyway, that's how I would encourage people to look at it. We're available on the contact information on the screen, as well as on our website, gonm.biz. And on behalf of the Economic Development Department and the Finance Development Team, I want to thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Torres, and I myself would like to thank everyone who's joined the webinar today. Again, this presentation will be sent out to all of our participants that came online to listen to the new updates that we're going to be implementing, and we appreciate your time. Have a great and productive rest of the week.